This is Imre Galambos, Professor of Chinese at Cambridge University, and this video focuses on one possible way of writing a peer-reviewed publication. Specifically, it examines how a new publication is sometimes developed from a single footnote. This is when you're writing an article, and as you work on one of the footnotes, you decide that it would make much more sense to write up that footnote as a whole new article and publish it separately. You kind of upgrade your footnote to business class. So if this is something you're interested in, stick around. But before that, please hit the subscribe button and like the video. That would help the channel. Quite often, good ideas come while writing other things, when you're busy trying to finish something else, and you don't really have the time to think about this new idea in depth. And it's precisely in these inconvenient moments that inspiration strikes. It is quite likely, almost inevitable, that you will notice new things while you're writing. Because you focus your attention and energies on a topic, you read what others have said about it and make notes. In fact, you probably read quite a bit of material that's not directly relevant, or maybe even entirely irrelevant, but you don't know this until you've read it. In addition, you go through a lot of primary material, some of which you have already seen but need to check again, but also some that you've never seen before. So you need to track it down, go to libraries and archives, sift through catalogs and acquisition records. And in the course of this, you find new and interesting things. You dig out golden nuggets. And all this material combines with what you already know about the topic, and also with your own approaches, your own methodology. And you unavoidably notice some interesting phenomena others have missed. You recognize mistakes in former scholarship, or get inspired to track down additional sources and look into something in more depth. In a sense, this is how your research develops. There are many things you're not aware of until you start looking at that topic with a magnifying glass. You look for secrets behind the curtain or under the carpet. And then you start writing on it, which is an engagement a step deeper than just reading about it or even thinking about it. The process of writing forces you to formulate your thoughts and to track down details you would not bother with otherwise. And in the course of writing, you will discover details you were oblivious to. You notice connections you had no idea about. You come across long-forgotten records which deserve to be known by everyone in your field. Naturally, not everything that comes to your attention is worth publishing. So you will always have to decide what to do with these new ideas and data depending on their relevance to your current project. If relevant, you will put some of them into the main body of your article. But you may also put some into the footnotes, some you will file as material for later projects, or perhaps for talks or teaching material, and others you will just note down and probably never use, or keep in your files until the right time comes. So if it is relevant enough, you may include it in a footnote. And once it is there, you may want to add something to it and then add something more. And after a while, you occasionally realize that the footnote is getting way too long, even though you still haven't finished saying what you wanted to say in this regard. You still have some thoughts, and they just keep pouring out of you. And sometimes you may even feel that you want to add additional footnotes to the footnote, which sounds crazy, but it is more common than you think. So it is at this point that it makes sense to open a new file and cut and paste the footnote into it so that you can develop it independently as a separate article. You promote it to a research article in its own right. You upgrade it. And then you either delete the entire footnote or keep it very short without going into much detail. To be honest, I don't really like references that say this idea will be developed as a separate study, or for this detail you should turn to my forthcoming article, because nobody knows what's going to happen. You either have published something else or you haven't, so if you haven't, just don't refer to it. Okay, the length of a footnote, however, is not the only consideration that may push you to turn it into a separate article. I've had cases when the new idea in the footnote was just too interesting and at the same time too important, and I felt that leaving it in a footnote would make the idea lost. It would not receive the amount of attention it deserves. And this is not me worrying that my brilliant new idea does not get enough media attention. But I feel that an interesting phenomenon may remain unnoticed. It would literally be hidden in a footnote, which is why I make an effort to give it some space and present it in a format that ensures that it gets noticed and appreciated. And that format, of course, is not a humble footnote, but a peer-reviewed article in a leading journal. Another consideration is that this idea, being so interesting and momentous, would distract from the main point of the original article, which is about something else. It has its own narrative flow, which I desperately want to preserve. And I don't want the reader to go off in tangential directions, chasing down rabbit holes away from the article. Instead, I want to make sure that I preserve the integrity and cohesiveness of my original article. And from that point of view, it makes perfect sense to remove shiny objects that distract the reader's attention. Of course, you can just delete them, but if the idea is good, it may be worth returning to it elsewhere. So in such cases, the best way to handle the new idea is to devote a separate article to it, where you would develop the idea in much more detail, give it the proper amount of stage light, and you would not let it to distract the reader from the main topic of the original article. A side benefit of starting a new article in this manner is that you usually have a very strong point, which is precisely why you ended up cutting it from its original place in the footnote. So this is definitely to the advantage of the new article. It is something you can build on, and you can use it to support a larger structure. But as always, you have to make sure that you stick to the main idea and develop the article around that. So everything that you write supports the main argument. All threads lead to the final conclusion. Everything channels the reader's attention to the punchline. In other words, you have to make sure you maintain a strong article structure. Now, once you've made the decision and cut out the footnote from its original place and inserted it into a new file, you begin adding your thoughts on this new topic. And from there on, the whole process is very much like writing any other article. You develop the topic, add a review of former scholarship, discuss their strong and weak points, then state the problem and provide a solution which is backed by your data, and sum it all up in the conclusions. Of course, it's possible that in this new article, you may also end up with footnotes that are getting just way too long or maybe too interesting. And so you can once again develop these into new articles. You cut them, put them into new files, and begin working on them separately. And then repeat the process from the beginning. In a way, it's not that surprising that many footnotes turn out to be interesting topics. For the most part, footnotes are much easier to write than the main part of your article, because we normally perceive them as less important, so there is less pressure on you to produce top quality writing. And so precisely for this reason, in the footnotes, you sometimes write differently. You are less constrained by rules and expectations, and you may come up with creative and novel ideas. Essentially, the footnote format gives you freedom and allows you to focus on what you want to say, without being limited by how you should be saying it. And this is why it can be a productive way of generating ideas for new research. Okay, this is all I wanted to say about upgrading a footnote into a publication. Let me know if you have any questions or if there are topics you want me to talk about. Thank you for watching and see you next time.